Be sure to subscribe to WXOU Sports on YouTube. WXOU Sports is the place to be for all things sports from your favorite college radio station. WXOU Sports features live audio broadcasts of all Oakland University home games, including men's and women's basketball. They also feature interviews with athletes and coaches, with highlights and more. Just go to YouTube and search WXOU Sports and hit subscribe. Now, back to the show. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow, your home for all Oakland University Golden Grizzlies sports, the only show of its kind. I am your host, Oakland alum and WXOU alum Giovanni Mosheri. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to help support the show as we are in basketball season. This will be the last episode covering some of the fall sports, so it's basketball from here until the Horizon League tournament. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review so that you don't miss a bit of the action for the Golden Grizzlies basketball season. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram. The GioMoShow has its own Instagram page. You can follow that at the GioMo Show. And you can follow me on Twitter at GioMosheri, WXOU. And while you're on social media, you can use the hashtag the GioMo Show to get involved with the show. And we got a whole lot of ground to cover for this bit of Golden Grizzlies action, as it's the final episode where we have the overlap of the fall and the winter sports. So we're going to be hitting men's soccer, volleyball, swim and dive, and then men's and women's basketball. Got a whole lot to cover, and we'll get to that in this episode. So happy you guys are here. Once again, be sure to subscribe right here on YouTube. Let your friends know that the GioMoShow is your place to be for all Oakland sports. So let's get into men's soccer, as the Horizon League Championship tournament that was held at Oakland University has concluded and is wrapped up. But unfortunately, with the crown not on the head of the Golden Grizzlies, but on that of Robert Morris. We'll get into the details of the tournament here. But before that, I want to set the stage for you guys when it comes to this tournament, when it comes to what this year's soccer team, their situation, and the storyline going into this tournament, because I find it fascinating how they got to where they are now. So we'll start last year to kind of set the stage for this one. Remember, this is now the second time in a row that Oakland has hosted the Horizon League tournament, which means 2 regular season championships in a row, but with very different circumstances. Last year, under head coach Eric Pogue, Oakland had a rough start to the beginning of their season due to Eric Pogue having a medical leave and leaving the head coaching duties to Paul Duro for the first portion for most of the non-conference part of the season. But even with that, Pogue came back at about, I think, the second game of the Horizon League season, and they still were able to make the number 1 seed and win the regular season. They did that with the Offensive Player of the Year in Mikey Ketterman, with the Freshman of the Year in Donovan Phillip, with 3 members on the All-League first team and 2 on the All-League second team, and Eric Pogue won Co-Coach of the Year, sharing the reward with the coach of Green Bay. So this team was on fire, but unfortunately, after they made it to the championship game, they lost in a heartbreaker to Green Bay 1-0, despite having opportunities late to score. I was at that game. I was freezing. I was frustrated, and my notes were like, what? Like I was writing horrible things in my notes out of frustration covering that game. It was a heartbreaker. So with that, coming into this season now, Eric Pogue was fired under strange and ongoing circumstances, and Paul Duro was put at the head coach position, this time for now the entirety of the season. And in addition to that, many of those all-league players that we mentioned that Oakland had, remember, 3 in the first team, 2 in the second team, most of those guys either transferred or graduated. So coming into this year, Oakland had a lot removed from a previous regular season championship runner-up in the tournament team. But even with that, Oakland was still able to get back to that championship game with a revenge win over Green Bay, winning 2-0 to get to that championship game. Oakland was able to beat them in the regular season too, to help secure that number 1 seed. And they got their revenge to get their way back to the championship game. In that game, Green Bay had the vast majority of shots. They had 13 shots in each of the two halves with 11 total shots on goal. Meanwhile, Oakland had 15 shots, only 6 of them on goal. But like we mentioned, 2 of them were able to get through to get them the 2-0 win in the Horizon League semifinals against Green Bay. Oakland with 11 saves. As we'll get to those that storyline in a little bit. But Alex Flowers, goalkeeper of the year, showing why. 11 saves in that game. 6 in the first and 5 in the second half. Green Bay had 17 corner kicks. Oakland only with 4. And even with all those opportunities Green Bay had, and not a single one went through as Oakland got the shutout win. Goals were scored in the 3rd minute by Malik Sylvester, assisted by Carson Bella. And in the 59th minute in the second half, Andrew Direction was able to score, assisted by Abdul Al-Rashed, to get those 2 goals and get them to the championship game. And if you guys want more information about the all-league teams and the awards that were given, I covered it in last week's show. But just to sum up, Oakland got Coach of the Year, Goalkeeper of the Year, and the Sportsmanship Award, with many in the first and some in the second team all-conference as well. So you could go back to last week. I got a timestamped for the men's soccer portion. You guys could go and check that out to get more of the details there. But now we get to Oakland in the championship game. On their home pitch, once again, facing now this time Robert Morris, a new and upcoming team in the Horizon League this year. Oakland was able to beat them in the regular season, setting up this being their next meeting. And this one was odd. I was able to watch this one a little bit, but when I tuned into it at about the 16th minute, Robert Morris had already scored, of which they did in the 9th minute. But despite Oakland having many chances, particularly around the 22nd minute or so, 4 corner kicks in a row, unable to get any of them through, and they've been pretty good in the set pieces throughout the season. And then shortly after halftime, Robert Morris still had the 1-0 lead with 45 minutes left for Oakland to come back in this one. A unfortunate event occurs. In the 46th minute, just coming out of halftime, a potent offensive player for the Golden Grizzlies. He, like I mentioned, he had a great goal against Green Bay to get them to this game. Andrew Direction gets red carded and removed from the game. And I was watching it a little bit. You can go both ways with the judgment of it, but the situation was that they were at the top of the box and Andrew was wrestling with one of Robert Morris's defenders, and in trying to free his arm, his elbow was up high, and trying to free himself, bashing the defender in the face with an elbow. Did it look intentional? Not to my knowledge, but I could tell that there was a bit of frustration with it just from my eyes watching it. So the red card, I would say, was somewhat justified in that, but that really put Oakland in a deep hole. Now having to score 1 goal to tie it and then 1 more to win it, and to do it in only one half with 1 player down, that is tough sledding, and Oakland was unable to get out of it with the score, losing once again in a 1-0 loss in the Horizon League championship game at the Oakland Soccer Field. Robert Morris becoming your Horizon League champion. So that one was a heartbreaker, and to have that, to put it into the perspective of how last year was, man, it's just it is heartbreaker after heartbreaker at the end of the season for the Golden Grizzlies. So close to getting that Horizon League championship once again, but it's going to have to come next year at the soonest. So the team is going to have to get together and run it back for a 3rd time. But man, it was just such a heartbreaker to see them not win it, to see the last few shots go through. The clock is ticking. They couldn't get any through, and you just see all the players, in disbelief, in frustration, in despair on the field. It was difficult to watch as an Oakland fan, and we wish them good luck in their next season, and a congratulations on a regular season championship and a great season overall for the Golden Grizzlies. And that's how we put the men's soccer season to bed. We close the last chapter of that book. Into the shelf it goes as we begin to fill in the pages of this next season's story. So that'll wrap up the men's soccer segment here. Coming up, we'll get into volleyball's last weekend, a little bit of swim and dive, and then we'll get to men's and women's basketball right here on the GioMoShow. So let's get into women's volleyball for the Golden Grizzlies, a team we didn't unfortunately get to cover very much this well because the season did not go the way that we were hoping and expecting. Oakland, on the verge of finishing in last place in the Horizon League, was faced with the number one team in the league for their last weekend of play. But Oakland was able to split that series against Wright State and avoid getting last place in the Horizon League. Hooray! And we'll detail how that went here. So, like I mentioned, the last two games of the regular season, Oakland was sitting at last place in the league. It was tied with Youngstown State for that last place spot. And if Oakland was able to somehow get one win, then they would probably be able to avoid that last place finish, which is exactly what happened. But it did not come in the first game against Wright State, where Oakland was promptly swept, scoring 13 in the first set, bringing it to an extra point in the second set, where Wright State would take it 26-24, and the third set, Wright State 25, Oakland 15. So had a chance in the second set, but otherwise Wright State was just rolling. But then we get to the second game. The first game was Friday. Next game was Saturday. We're recording this on Monday the 18th. But for the final game of the season, this one went to 5, where Wright State would take the first two sets, holding Oakland to 12 and 14 points in those opening sets. But Oakland would finish out the regular season with a reverse sweep against the number one team in the league. 25-20 in the third set, 25-22 in the fourth set, and then holding Wright State to 6 in that final fifth set, 15-6 to close out the win. And Oakland would surprisingly finish third from last, which is a way to say 8th place in the Horizon League with a 4-14 conference record. Not enough to get into the Horizon League tournament, which includes only the top 6 teams in the league. But I want to take a closer look at their last game of that win against Wright State, as I was taking a look at the stats, and none of them really seem to make sense. A lot of it coming from the brutality of the first two of those sets, but overall in the match, Wright State, they were up in points, they were up in kills, they were up in aces, they were up in assists and digs, but Oakland was still able to win. Oakland had the advantage of 10 blocks to 3, but Wright State had every other stat, but Oakland was still able to get the win in 5 sets. Like I mentioned, the low scoring in the first 2 sets probably skewed the numbers a little bit, but I was looking at it, I found that fascinating for Oakland to get that win. So if Oakland was in last place, then who finished in last place in the Horizon League? Well, it was Youngstown State with a 3-15 overall, or excuse me, a 3-15 conference record. Robert Morris would be the 9th place team with 4-14, and Oakland tied with them, getting the tiebreaker from beating them earlier in the regular season. A 4-14 conference record will land Oakland in 8th place, a 2-spot drop-off from last year where Oakland was able to be the last seed in the tournament at 6th place. So a bit of a regression this year, and it will have to come next year for improvement to get back into the tournament. As for the volleyball standings going into the tournament, that it will be hosted this weekend at Wright State, the number 1 seed. It will be Cleveland State and IU Indy in the first round match, and then Green Bay and Purdue Fort Wayne, the lowest of the seeds, will face Wright State in the semifinals. The highest seed remaining will go against number 2 Milwaukee for the semifinals matches, and then we'll see who ends up being the champions of the Horizon League Volleyball Edition. So that will wrap up the volleyball segment for this episode, as well for the rest of the season. If any other big news comes out for the volleyball team, we'll be sure to cover it. But for now, that is also the final chapter of the story of this volleyball season for 2024. And we heard all about it here on the GioMoShow. We'll get right into swim and dive here before we get to men's and women's basketball, as we have announcements from the Horizon League that both Oakland men's and women's teams represented in the Horizon League Swimmers of the Week. Christopher Palvidre, help me, won the men's Horizon League Swimmer of the Week, and Jordan Ships, a familiar name for Oakland Swim and Dive, is the Horizon League Swimmer of the Week on the women's side. So for those awards that were given out for last week's performances, both hosting Grand Valley and away at Ann Arbor, were Christopher against Michigan. He got third in the 100 breaststroke and second in the 200 breaststroke. And against Grand Valley in all four of his events, he finished in first place with times registering at the top of the Horizon League for this season against Grand Valley. And for Jordan Ships against Michigan, she was second place in both her butterfly events in the 100 and the 200 butterfly, and similar to Christopher, getting first place in all four of her events, topping the charts of the Horizon League swim and dive season for this season. So we're looking at two of some of the fastest in the Horizon League being awarded as swimmers of the week. But for this week, Miami of Ohio was the place where they swam and unfortunately did not come away with a win on the men's or women's side. Some first place finishes for the women's side. Mia Englander was first place in the 1,000-yard freestyle, and Rihanna Hensler was first place in the 200 butterfly for the women's side. And for the men's side, our guy Carl Subagio, first in the 500 and first in the 200 freestyle. Be sure to go and check out Carol's story. Like I mentioned last week, I'll have it linked in the description here. I was able to do the interview with him for his Through the Eyes story, and he's got a fantastic story about international swimming, representing his home nation, his home province in Indonesia, and one of the fastest in that region. Lucky for us, we get to have him on the Golden Grizzlies, so be sure to go and check out his Through the Eyes story. It's a fascinating tale. Upcoming for the swim and dive team this Thursday, November 21st, they'll be traveling to Eastern Michigan to face the Eagles and Ypsilanti to see if we could get more times at the top of the charts for the Horizon League. And we'll keep an eye on them throughout the season on the GioMoShow. Because as a former swimmer myself, I just love catching up with the swim and dive portion of it. I know how difficult it is. I know how grueling the training is. So to see them succeed at this level is just... It's wonderful to see, and I have a great appreciation for it. I hope that comes through for you guys listening as well. And I just realized my swim cap is not in view. It's behind us with the glare in the window, but yeah, I always keep my I keep the swim stuff around the room sometimes. I like to reminisce at times because I wasn't fast enough to continue swimming, so I live vicariously through the Golden Grizzly swim and dive team. Anyway, too much truth. We'll take a break here before we get into the basketball side of things. But before we take a break, I want to let you know about Oakland Club Sports. This weekend, the Oakland Club women's soccer team will be traveling to Round Rock, Texas for the NERSA National Championship Tournament. Their return from last year's trip, they want revenge, and they have unfinished business in Round Rock. I had an interview with the entire E-Board. All 5 members were on the GioMoShow. That one was released on WXOU Sports' YouTube channel, which you should also go and subscribe to and support the team. See what they're going into that tournament with, the attitude, the fire, and their stories and how they got to the Oakland Club soccer team. You can check that out on WXOU Sports on YouTube. I'll have that linked in the description below so that you guys don't have to go scrolling too far to find it. It'll be right there for you. And in addition to that, we got interviews. We got 2 of them throughout the years with the director of club sports, Kyle Reese. And in the latest interview on WXOU Sports, he has a very interesting story about a run-in with former Kentucky head basketball coach, John Calipari. So it's a great story to hear. Definitely one you want to go and check out on WXOU Sports. So that wraps up men's soccer and volleyball and swim and dive, leaving us with men's and women's basketball coming up real soon here on the GioMoShow. So we'll start the basketball segment with the women's team having only one game to cover in the past week. They traveled to Ann Arbor to face Brooke Quarles-Daniels and the Michigan Wolverines. Brooke Quarles-Daniels transferring from her 2 years at Oakland to Michigan, having great production off the bench for us, and showed off a little bit of that against her former team Oakland, unfortunately, suffering an 88-42 loss over the Wolverines. I was able to catch some of the radio broadcast because I don't got Big Ten Network or Big Ten Plus, and I ain't paying for that to watch Michigan. So I was able to listen to a little bit of the radio broadcast, keep up with it. And by the way, Matt Park does a great job as the voice of Michigan women's basketball, so I wanted to give him a shout out as well. But like I said, 88-42 loss for the Golden Grizzlies in Ann Arbor. It was kind of alternating quarter by quarter as to how they were doing, at least offensively, because in the first quarter, Oakland was able to keep it, I believe it was 12-17 after the first quarter, shooting 45% from the floor, 40% from three, 5 of 11, and then 2 of 5, respectively. So Oakland was doing pretty good on offense, but then the second quarter just crashed and burned. 2 of 12 from the floor, 1 of 5 from three, scoring only 5 points in that second quarter, leaving a much wider gap going into halftime than they did after the first quarter. Third quarter really picked up, 57% from the floor and 33% from three overall. And then the fourth quarter coming back down to earth, 23% from the floor, 0% from three. So Oakland just seemed to be alternating on offense back and forth of whether baskets were going in or not. Meanwhile, Michigan had the vast majority of the shots taken. So it wasn't only holding Oakland to low percentage, but taking a lot more shots than Oakland did. Overall, Michigan had 73 shots compared to Oakland with 50 shots taken in the game. So it's a tough battle. Of course, this is one of those games like the men's team plays. They play above their level for iron to sharpen iron to see what they need to work on. So that's what this game is in addition to the game against Michigan State. So the way their schedule goes is it's Michigan State to sharpen the iron, Cleary to polish that sharpened iron, and then we go back to Michigan to resharpen and seem to alternate back and forth. Or the next game will be against St. Thomas of Minnesota, so we'll see if they get to polish or be sharpened again in that game, but it seemed to be alternating so far in their season schedule. Looking at the box score, Maddie Skorupski, unfortunately, 2 of 10 from the floor and 1 of 4 from three. Not a great shooting night for her. Danny Grimm started off hot. I believe, 3 of 4 from the floor, 1 of 1 from three at the time, but finished 3 of 7 and 1 of 2 for a total of 7 points. But Liana Baxter ended up having the highlight performance for the Golden Grizzlies, at least offensively. 10 points on 4 of 8 from the floor and 2 of 3 from the three-point line in her 19 minutes of play. And in addition, Madison Royal Davis had an efficient 4 points with 6 rebounds, leading the team in that category as well. Serenity Robert Adams getting a start in that game, picking up 4 rebounds as well as a freshman on this team. So definitely not a high-performance game for the Golden Grizzlies, as the matchup would usually dictate. And a little note on Michigan, how Brooke Quarles-Daniels did. Only 4 points, was 2 of 6 from the floor, but had 5 rebounds and 3 assists and 3 steals in her 19 minutes of play. For those Oakland fans who are wondering how Brooke Quarles-Daniels was doing at Michigan, she seems to be having a good time with the Wolverines. So that will put Oakland currently at a 1-3 overall record, and that would put them with their next game coming up as hosting, this is a strange way to phrase it. Next game, they'll be hosting St. Thomas of Minnesota Thursday, November 21st at 4 p.m. at the arena as part of a basketball doubleheader this coming Thursday. And then they'll be on the road this coming Sunday, November 24th, going to Mount Pleasant to face the Central Michigan Chippewas. I always recall, the past couple of games that Oakland's played against Central Michigan have been fun. 2 years ago, they hosted them, and it was a big win. And I remember shouting, "Where's the fired of the upped Chips?" I was shouting at them. Their latest game at the arena was a 20-point comeback, which was a lot of fun to cover on the sideline. And so hopefully this matchup in Mount Pleasant is going to prove to be just as much fun as they have been in the arena. Again, St. Thomas on Thursday at 4 p.m. and then at Central Michigan Sunday at 1 p.m. for the Golden Grizzlies women's basketball team. So now we'll shift gears and head over to the men's side, and I'll say this first: if you guys want a lot more in-depth coverage of this road trip that the men's team have been on, I got an interview. I got the beat writer for the Horizon Roundtable for the Golden Grizzlies, Griffin Beers, joins the show, and we talk all about that road trip, what these games of iron sharpening iron is the phrase I like to go to, how those games have developed the Golden Grizzlies and what we could potentially see when they come back home this season in the Horizon League, as well as later in their non-conference play. We'll talk all about that with Griffin Beers. That one will be in the description, and hopefully it'll be to the side of me on YouTube if you guys are watching there. But I love talking to Griffin Beers. He's just so knowledgeable. There's very few people that know Golden Grizzlies basketball like he does, as a 4-year manager, as a kid who's grown up in the arena. His father is now in his 20th season as the public address announcer, so he's always been in the arena. Very few people know Oakland like he does, so happy to get him on the show. Definitely worth a watch. But for those who want the general summary of how these games went, their latest ones at Illinois and at Kansas for the Golden Grizzlies men's basketball team. Thank goodness this grueling road trip is over, because this was tough games for the Golden Grizzlies. A lot of positives coming out of it, but still, that's a tough schedule. Boise, Illinois, Kansas, all on the road early in the season. That's tough. So going to Illinois, Golden Grizzlies will fall 66-54 against the Fighting Illini in Champaign. Leading the team in scoring was Jason Woodrich with 11 points. Still trying to find his groove from 3. Was 1 of 9 against the Illini and was 4 of 15 overall from the floor. But he brings much more than 3-point shooting. Picked up 4 rebounds, dished 2 assists and 2 steals as well, as he was starting to get a little more comfortable in the system, as we heard from Coach Smitty in part of the radio broadcasts. In addition to that, DQ Cole getting to double digits as well with 10 points. Also still trying to find the groove from 3. The whole team seems to be finding their groove from 3. DQ Cole, 2 of 7 from deep and 3 of 8 overall. So not the greatest showing for the Golden Grizzlies in that game, but still a lot of improvements made, especially defensively, where they're starting to get a lot more comfortable in the system. Jalen Jones had some smooth moves as well. Very concerning towards the end of the game. Jason Woodrich went out of the game with an arm injury, did not return, but would end up returning against Kansas. But that one was scary as well. Oakland was able to force 18 turnovers against the Illini, which is a great defensive improvement as well. But it's just the offense that's going to have to improve. But as a last number for this game, 10 of 11 from the free throw line in a tough environment in Champaign. So very nice to see. But unfortunately, that free throw shooting would not continue when they visit the number 1 Kansas Jayhawks in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. And I'll get to the box score in a second, but I can just tell from the broadcast alone, that one I was able to link up the radio and the TV for that one, because I could care less about Kansas's broadcast. They had an interview with their volleyball coach at halftime, which is great for them, but I'm an Oakland fan. I don't need to hear that. So I was able to link up the radio from Neil Rule and Jimmy Kennedy and the television broadcast. So that one was a lot of fun. But just from those broadcasts alone, you could just feel that atmosphere. It was talked about, it was hyped about, and it delivered. That place is a zoo when it comes to their basketball team. So the mecca of college basketball is in Lawrence, Kansas, and it was just incredible to even feel it from afar. And that did kind of show itself on the floor as well. Oakland was 3 of 12 from the free throw line. And the worst part of it, the low light of the free throw shooting, was early in the game, Malcolm Christie was fouled on a 3 and didn't make any of his 3 free throws. It was just you could just tell, and Campy mentioned it, and Campy takes a little bit of blame for it, of hyping it up too much, which I can understand from his perspective. This is the one of the highest levels of college basketball in terms of team and atmosphere, in terms of program and everything, he's gonna hype it up because it's true. But it kind of maybe backfired a little bit, got them a little bit too nervous. Things improved in the second half, but you could tell they were feeling it. But just that atmosphere was incredible to see. But some other takeaways from it was, well, one, Malcolm Christie finding the net when it comes to shooting from deep. He was 3 of 7. He was more efficient earlier in the game than he finished with at 3 of 7. But the threes are starting to fall down for Malcolm Christie as well. Jason Woodridge still waiting on that a little bit. But the big star of this game was Alan Mukeba, who is probably going to be the highlight for a lot of these games for Oakland. But he, in the Illinois game too, man, he got on SportsCenter for 2 incredible dunks against Illinois. So he already got his big attention there, but he was able to follow it up with a great performance against the number 1 team in the country, with the 7'2" center Hunter Dickinson, who we know from Michigan. He was able to outduel the 7'2" center by scoring 19 with 7 rebounds in 32 minutes played, compared to Hunter Dickinson, who was 10 and 9 for that game. So it was just, he was everywhere, muscling through, able to get his shot up against the glass over those tall centers, and was just everywhere, making himself known throughout the country, or at least throughout the Horizon League. Because if he could do this, he was 9 of 15 from the floor, so very efficient. He had 5 offensive rebounds for a total of 7. So you had a great performance. He had 2 steals as well. I didn't even notice that. 2 steals in addition to all of that. If he can do that against Kansas, and if he could do that against Illinois, he was 4 of 9 for 8 points. But either way, if he could perform like this in the non-conference, just imagine what he can do in the Horizon League. It's exactly what Campy was hyping him up to be in those little scouting videos that Oakland released, where he can come into this league and be one of the most dominant big men in our league. And we're going to need that, with the leaving of Trey Townsend. Mukeba so far filling in that role nicely for the Golden Grizzlies. And relax, I'm not comparing the two, but in terms of their role in production, it's a good substitute so far for this season. I can't wait to see what happens when we get into that Horizon League play. And it's not even that far away. We're only a couple of weeks from the first week of December, where they have those first games of the Horizon League season, which is strange. Like they start a little bit and then the holiday break and then they get back. But either way, it's not that far away, so we'll be able to see how this Oakland team, after being in the non-conference oven for so long, we get to see how the bread is baked. It's a metaphor that I was a very big fan of. I was very happy I came up with throughout the week. But it's been a tough schedule so far, and I'm hoping to see that come to fruition when we play Eastern Michigan this coming Thursday as part of that doubleheader in the arena, where we get to finally return to kind of our level of college basketball and see how we have improved. It's going to be a ton of fun. And just and one last point to illustrate how they played against Kansas, they technically won this. Oakland technically won the second half if you just isolate that, because in the first half, Kansas 68% from the floor, 56% from 3, but in the second half, Oakland was able to cut that down 46 from the floor and 27% from 3 against Kansas. So much improvement was made during halftime, which is great to see. Despite the score, I'll give you the score. It was 78-57. Like, that's the point of these games is not to win it. The point of these games is to learn and to grow and to get better, which Oakland has done in previous seasons, at least in the previous season. So as an Oakland fan, I trust the process. I understand the process. I understand that it's the conference season that matters, not so much this. Are you going to kind of kick yourself if it comes down to a tie in the overall record? Maybe, but it's, you could play cupcakes throughout the season, and then once you actually face, Purdue, Fort Wayne, when you actually face Milwaukee or Northern Kentucky, some of those top teams, what good is that fluffy non-conference schedule if it doesn't get you ready for teams that you're going to be facing then? So I'm trusting the process. It looks ugly, but I'm still hopeful about the Golden Grizzlies season. So as mentioned, they'll return to the arena Thursday at 7 o'clock against Eastern Michigan. Women's team playing at 4, men's team playing at 7. It's going to be a ton of fun. You could see me at that game for sure. And let me know if you guys are fans of the JoMo Show, if you see me there. But either way, that wraps up the men's basketball segment. That wraps up the women's basketball segment, as well as swim and dive, volleyball, and men's soccer. That wraps up the whole JoMo Show here. Like I said, we had a whole lot of ground to cover, and we did cover it. Next week will probably be a little bit more condensed just for the sake of not having volleyball and soccer news to talk about. So we'll be right into basketball with a little bit of swim and dive as well. And it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you don't miss one bit of the action for the Golden Grizzlies on the JoMo Show. We're the only podcast that covers exclusively the Oakland University Golden Grizzlies, and it's a lot of fun to cover. Hope you guys have as much fun as I do doing this show. So, with all that wrapped up, this has been the JoMo Show. My name is Giovanni Mosheri. So happy you guys joined us, and we'll see you next week for more Golden Grizzlies action on the JoMo Show.